Hey y'all, welcome back to Outspoken, the only show where we call it like it is. And if you get offended, well, maybe that's your problem. I'm Jay.
Hey, and I'm Joe, and today we're talking about something that affects literally millions of Americans. Not one wants to admit how flawed it really is. Welfare, food stamps, Medicaid, housing, all that stuff we're told is fairly given out. But is it?
Because here's the deal. These programs are run by states, not DC. And the people approving or denying you that help, they're just that, people with their own political views, biases, and maybe even an axe to grind.
So let's ask the real question. How do we know these gatekeepers are being fair? Are the rights of people getting help, or just the ones who know how to play the system?
This isn't just about assistance, it's about access and who gets to survive. And around here, we stay outspoken enough to say it. Hey, listen, before we get started, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken, share the show with everyone you know, and hit that icon to get updated when we upload new episodes. Let's get into it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Outspoken. So who really runs welfare, Jay? And when we talk about welfare, we're not talking about the welfare program itself, which most of you people know are part of memes all over the place, right? Like, oh, you're on welfare. Oh, your mama's on welfare. You know, those jokes back in high school. So we're talking about...
Your mama's on welfare. That's great.
You know it's true, bro. Anyway, we're talking about welfare in general as far as it comes to systems that government assists. SNAP, TANIF, Medicaid, housing, all these state-administered programs. We look at these programs and we think, well, oh, you know, DC's in trouble, they're in charge and blah, blah, blah. The way it works is DC distributes these funds to these states, and the states then in turn distribute these funds to cities and counties. And that's where our decision-making come. They don't come from DC, but from our local agencies who administer or run these programs, I should say. Each state interprets eligibility differently on who gets it, how they get it, and why they get it. Let's be honest, it's not a non-biased person sitting behind a computer marking off boxes. This is a person, this is not or AI that takes into account all kinds of things and says, oh, kick something out. These are individuals who either voted for a certain way, who feel a certain way, who even might be people that don't like a certain color. This is what we're talking about. This is a reality of our welfare system for the states, for the counties, for the cities out there. And I think it's important, Jay, that we talk about it.
Yeah, so a great question for the audience. Do you trust your state government to decide if your family deserves food or shelter?
And let me say this, Jay, that's a huge question. These programs, and let's be honest, they're not intended for long term. These are assistance programs. These are to either assist you in times of crisis for a short period of time. You lose your job, you have an ailment with a child or yourself and you need additional assistance. These programs are great and they're beneficial to everyone. And so they are necessary. But of course, we have those individuals who take advantage of the system and are getting, for example, EBTs that are $2,000-$3,000 on there, right? And some of these cards, you could even draw cash out of them. So how are they getting this help? And what are the qualifications? And again, like we said earlier, this isn't AI making the decision. They're made by people. They're made by workers who bring bias. They bring burnouts. They bring political leanings to the desk. It's not your everyday Joe Schmo who goes off a checklist. And let's say there is a checklist. Jay, let's say there's a checklist and say, hey, look for this, look for that, your W-2s, your I-9 status, your whatever the case is, you know, your income for your last month, your rent. If there was a checklist, are they bypassing it? Like if it's asking for I-9, let's say, let's check it off because they have one. I'm not even ask you because I don't think they should be asking that. It doesn't matter if you're legal or illegal, right? Now, those are the Karens. Here's the thing, Jay, and correct me if I'm wrong. Do you not think that by not following a process, by not following it checks and balances, that we're taking funds away from state residents? So when I mean state resident, I mean legal state residents or legal county residents or legal city residents. Are we taking funds away from them?
Absolutely. Anytime there's a biases again, and you have the authority to make a decision based on that, what are you going to make that decision on? You know, it's somebody I like. So this is my neighbor. So I'm going to give them an advantage over the people down the street that maybe need something more. However, they just are not my buddy, And this happens in workplaces all around. You can look at nepotism in workplaces and things like that. This really becomes a bigger issue because this is state and federal funded monies, depending on what level you're at. We've got folks that are going to be doling out the checkbook, and it just depends on how they feel about the individual, if they feel they're deserving or not. And I think that can cause a lot of problems. It's one of the things, like we've got so much money that's spent in our country today, and we still have veterans sleeping on the streets, that don't get care. And being that I went through it with my dad being a veteran and dealing with the Veterans Administration, the VA, on everything, it was a hot mess. And I'm really disappointed that our government treats our people that have served our country like that.
And this is something that happens every day.
It is.
Here's the thing, and I have and this is weird because it just came to me. I am older. I'm in my late 30s now, so I get, I forget things. I just remembered growing up.
You're older than me, so that makes me 29.
Here we go. Let's continue on, ladies and gentlemen. I remember when I was younger, I was just married, and one of my neighbors, not that it means anything, but she was a minority. She worked for the state of California for the Department of Motor Vehicles, and she would do favors for people. They would go to her house and say, hey, I need a hookup for this, and they'd give her $20. Hey, can you do this? I don't have this. And she'd hook them up. And I'm like, girl, what are you doing? And, there was a time where I even considered, I'm like, do I want to go in line and wait with all these people at the DMV? You've been in DMV in California. You know the nightmare. I can't do that, bro. Because, at the time, I'm trying to get into law enforcement. And can you imagine? I was petrified if they did a background. So I'm like, hey, how did you bypass it? I'm like, I'm good. I always wonder. So again, I was young. It came to mind right now that we're talking about this. But then you start realizing, wait a minute, this has been going on forever. If she was able to do that in the state of California for the Department of Motor Vehicles, who is it, right? And you see it, guys, I'm being me, but you see these people come to work with their backpacks, their lunch bags, their Starbucks or their hydro flask in their desk that has all their family portraits on there. Their home is that office, right? So they've gotten used to it. They feel comfortable there. So then at what point do you start saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this person a favor. I know the system. I ain't getting caught. What does it do to citizens that need the help? And so that's very important. I don't know. What do you think, Jay? What's your angle?
I think that we need to have a good discussion, and with somebody that is definitely more versed on it and is in the environment way more than we are. So what happens when it's someone who thinks everyone's a grifter?
Or someone who bends every road to help someone they feel bad for?
So we're going to get into this with somebody that knows a lot more about it than we do. Our special guest today works as a clinical therapist in the Youth Hospitalization Intervention Program. Karen, welcome to Outspoken.
Hi, guys.
How you doing today?
Good.
You've heard us talk, and you heard us talk right now in our intro. Have you ever seen decisions that are swayed by either bias, by emotion, or just stereotypes with the state of California?
I've seen decisions being swayed, but I think it was more of time restraints and burnouts.
Does that happen a lot?
Yes.
Why do you have the burnout? Is it because of the workload you have there? Is it because of supervisors? Is it just peers? What creates that burnout? Or workload? The
workload. One example is with the office I worked for in the city, we had 986 cases. Compared to the city next to us, which was a smaller town, smaller population, they had 96. So even though the county has no wrong door policy, meaning you can take an application into any office and they even do them online now, but it's by zip code. And so your application gets distributed to a zip code to that office. So if there's more people more population in that city with that office, then that's your workload.
Wow.
So on average, what is a typical caseworker, in your case, clinical therapist's workload look like?
For us at this time, it should be anywhere from 25. As far as an eligibility tech with Department of Public Social Services, it is about 300.
Wait a minute, 300 case files?
Mm-hmm.
For one individual?
For one individual, but on top of the 300 caseloads, you have to determine, because SNAP benefits have a different regulation, whether it's state, and Medi-Cal has more of a federal.
So let me ask you this. 300 cases for one person. This one person is the one that's going to decide their eligibility?
Yes.
Okay, so let me break this down real quick. So you got one individual, 300 case files to go over for eligibility. And earlier you said that you've seen decisions swayed because of time restraints.
Yes.
So is there any way possible that because of that, Now you have this individual with 300 case files who's on time restraint, possibly because they might run out of the window of opportunity, that some of these things could be, some important key elements could be either missed, ignored, thrown out. I don't know. What's your take on that?
So when they come in and whether they're adding a baby, they have so many days to do that in.
Mm-hmm.
If they're newly applying, we have 30 days to process it. Unless they prove no income, then we have 3 days to process it. The case has to be processed within 3 days. But if you also have, out of your 300 cases, you have 75 within that month that you have to do recertification for, along with the semi-annual report that you have to do with other cases. So everyone's on a cycle, whether it's a year renewal or a 6-month renewal. And it means verifications, that means income changes, that means household size changes, the household dynamic changes. You have to change all those things in it. So if you can't get to all those cases, or even say the mailroom comes in and they scan the images in and they put them behind something different because they're overwhelmed, or the files get somewhere else, person didn't turn them in, we didn't check them, guess what, the case closes and you have to start all over again.
Oh, wow. So that could delay what you're saying is that could delay some important treatment or something for that individual that now has to start the process all over again, correct?
Yes.
Wow, that is crazy. Now in these, so we have 300 case files, and you have one person that goes through this and checking for eligibility. Have you ever seen or heard of any patterns of discrimination or favoritism? It's kind of hard probably in your area because it's dealing with mental health, but like a pressure from supervisors or from politics. You've seen is there an increase because they see, let's say, a Republican president coming in? Or is there a decrease, or because now there's a Democratic president or Republican or whatever the case is? Have you seen any of these things?
Political parties do change a lot of it because they are different regulations, different requirements. They're adding something new. They're changing something. On top of that, you have to go through all this training all over again to know what those regulations is, but still maintain your 300 cases.
It's crazy. But have you seen it or heard it though, where people have I just went through it real quick. I didn't have time. There's too many. Or I didn't like this person, or this person's been like the 5th time and I feel like they're cheating the system. Or have you ever heard of anything like that happening?
A lot of our telephone callbacks, when they call, a lot of the employees will clear the calls before because they just don't even have time to hear them. So at the end of the day, you have to have your call log cleared. And if that means not even listening to them and deleting them as you go through and just getting rid of them just to be able to do what's on your task, because then you have a task list with that too. And that could be anywhere from 100 to 150 in a day.
So is this for the clinical therapist? Is this for the person that's doing the eligibility, or for both?
It's mainly for the eligibility. As
Wow.
far as the clinical therapist, it's also a lot of time restraints because you have to have a certain percentage productivity wise to be able to verify the funding.
So let me ask you this. Are these time restraints highly focused because they worry about people dropping out of the system or their cases closed without even being seen because of the 30 days or the 3 days or whatever the time frame is? Or is it all because as a county, this is what your stats need to look like, this is where you need to be? So do you see more of we got to meet the standard, or is it because, hey, we really got to get to these people because it's important?
When we go in, it's a lot of especially the employees that burn out more than anything else, they do go in caring and they want to care. Yeah. And they want to focus on this one case, like, how do I get them the benefits? What do I need to do? And depending on, again, who's in politics and where everybody's at, it also depends on keywords that they have to say. Like, okay, if you're a student, we're not allowed to say, hey, if you're a student, then we don't count your income because you don't qualify, but the rest of your family does. You don't get to say things like that. You don't get to say, if you're a student and we want to make you eligible, you have to say that you have some form of anxiety and you need special care when you go to school. So there's a lot of things that isn't put into the system that we know can help you get benefits. And so a lot of the employees will focus on that when they care, but then they miss their next appointment or they miss the next call.
Got it. So like the example I gave earlier, the person that worked for the DMV for the state of California, she would say, hey, when you go to the window, ask for this or do this. It's almost like going to In-N-Out and getting the secret menu. It's the same thing. Hey, ask for this. It's like keywords, and you get bypass certain things. And I know you can't say these things because then you're just giving them the answer. It's like the test. Do you feel like there are some clinical therapists or some people that are doing the eligibility who really truly take it personal and emotional and say and lead them into that? You know how you get attorneys that lead into questions that giving them the answer? Do you suspect or do you think that there's people that are leading them to say what they need to say so they could get that eligibility?
There are some.
Yeah.
There are some, especially the new ones
Yeah.
when they first start.
It's hard.
And then after a couple of years, they become numb to it, and it's just processed through. Like, these are the key questions you got to ask, whether you do or don't. You didn't turn in your paperwork. I did, this date. They gave me a receipt. Didn't find it. Got to close your case. And there's no explanation. Close it out. Move to the next one.
You know, that's hard. You know it's happening, Jay, right? You know these things are happening. I mean, you and I have talked this outside of this platform, and we've said, like, oh, there has to be some kind of bias. There has to be. But you know what? To hear it from someone that actually is in it, it's saddening.
You think about it, it's like with anything. A human somewhere has to interpret the data points, right? And take the whatever the numbers are, whatever the situation, like Karen's talking here about, you know, if a student has anxiety, but they have to bring that up and say that. So and what was the other thing? Their income's not counted. Well, they probably do the paperwork and they're like, oh, we got to count everybody's income in here. And if they're not told that or prepped that prior to, they're not going to have any idea. You know, just if you take things like just plain old tax law is extremely hard to understand, right? And businesses get fined all the time and individuals get fined all the time based on that. So there's no way for anybody to really know this stuff. You'd have to do a ton of research. And I think a show like this, where we have somebody that comes on that has, you know, forehand knowledge of what they need to do, it's the first step in people understanding that they need to do a little bit more research before they go in. And being that it's so time sensitive, like you said, there's like the 3-day threshold basically before you have to close out the account. And see, and the thing is with that, I understand that, right? Because you're going to have folks that are going to hem-haw. And the thing is I remember living in a neighborhood years ago, wasn't a great neighborhood. The people on the block that went to work every day, working minimum wage or a little bit above that, right? All had clean yards and everything. And I remember the people across the street from me that were all on government assistance and everything had the dirtiest yard in the neighborhood, right? So there is this thing of folks that do need help, but they don't have the incentive, right, to get out there and do it. So there has to be something.
Well, they have the incentive not to go out there and work.
Exactly. But even with like these government assistant programs, they have to create an incentive for them to try to get in there and do it. Because if not, they're going to have this case file open for 6 months waiting on people to, you know, call, come in, all these, well, I couldn't do this today. Oh, I couldn't do this today. You don't have a job. You don't do anything. I mean, this is one of those things for you that should be your job. Like my dad, I remember told me one time, I mean, I have to knock on wood, thank God, I've never been without a job. I've never had unemployment ever. But he said, I remember him telling me this specifically. He said, if you're ever out of a job, your job now for 8 hours a day is to find a job.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that doesn't happen. So yeah, I feel really bad for, you know, especially Karen was talking about the new employees coming in, right? It's kind of like I've talked to
You want to make a difference. You want to go in there.
Absolutely.
Change the
you know,
world.
you care about people, and it's just like nurses, you know. I've talked to nurses before and they're like, man, when I first started, I wanted to save the world, save everybody, you know, make everybody healthy again. And she's like, after enough people get sick or don't care enough to, you know, get any better, or they die on the table in front of you, she said it becomes a job. It really does. It just becomes a job.
Well, you have to think, and I think Karen would agree, sometimes you have to take the emotions out of it, like you said. And it goes the same with almost first responders, law enforcement, even in state work like Karen's involved in. You have to get your emotions out of it, right? Because yes, and for the example you gave of nurses, of course they want to save lives. I'm sure doctors do as well. But sometimes either you're limited with the stuff that the hospital provides, you're limited with the stuff that you could do or you're allowed to do, or insurance allows you to do, right? There's just so many things and factors that at one point you just become null to the whole thing. And you're like, God, let's just get it done, right? You come, you check the vitals and you move out. You're done. You can't, you try not to attach yourself emotionally to a case file, to a patient, to a suspect, to a victim, because then you get emotional and you start making decisions based on emotion and not based on law, logic, or whatever the case is. Now, let's dive in a little bit deeper, Karen. We talked about the person that does the eligibility. Now, you got one individual trying to justify or approve or deny eligibility for a state program. And I'm sure, and I'm assuming that this is the same process across the table with SNAP, housing, welfare, whatever the case is, right? Is the same process. Now let's bring it down to you. You're in the mix. The eligibility part has come through. You got your case file. You have people who you now in your position, because you're not involved, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not involved in the eligibility part. You're involved in now the actual one-on-one caretaking of this individuals and their needs. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now comes to you. Now you sit here based on whatever approval they did for that eligibility. And now you're sitting here not thinking, do they deserve the help? Do they qualify the help? If they get the help, you're just like, okay, this is my case file. I got to work on helping this individual, right? And of course, you understand that there's in those 300, maybe a small fraction of those get approved. And I'm sure there's a human factor thinking, man, all those other people didn't qualify. And that's kind of sad because we're talking about mental health. And here on this program, we are highly focused on mental health. Now, not everyone who gets help actually qualifies. And I'm sure you've seen that as well.
Yes.
So this system, our systems, our government assistance programs is built to be precise, right? But people make it messy. Am I okay in saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen someone clearly deserving to get denied? Or someone who clearly, because they work the system to get more out of it or to get whatever benefits you guys can provide. Have you seen that happen?
I've seen it too. Depends on the severity of it, of the individual. We have a lot of children at this point that are high on the spectrum for autism, but they don't meet our requirements because they're not comprehending what we're doing. So with that, that's hard.
Got it.
They don't comprehend. You have to get them to sign the waiver. And if they're over 14, they can sign their own. They're supposed to sign their own now. So it doesn't matter if their parents sign or not. They're 14.
So at 14, that the county says, hey, you qualify to sign this, that you could do this on your own. Okay.
Yeah. And we have to get their approval because it's voluntary basis.
Got it. And if they don't comprehend, then you can't help them?
Nope.
Do you ever see anyone bypass that?
I've seen them work really hard to get them to just say, do you like me being here? Do you like talking to me? And get them to sign.
Got it. Okay. And you know what? And I honestly, personally, since the 90s to now, autism has really grown. I personally have no clear understanding because, there's some severe autism where they're nonverbal. And then there's just autism that, they it seems like they function normally, but maybe they don't do well with crowds and they'll call it, me personally, I feel like the medical field is so quick to label everyone with something. And I know Jay has gender dysphoria, but, everyone has something.
Hey, I told you that's a personal thing, all right?
So, Karen, how many, the individual clinical therapist that you are, how many case files do you have to work with? What does your load look like?
Right now, the max I've had in the last 3 months is about 25.
So about a classroom size.
Yes.
Here's my question, and maybe I just don't understand the whole therapy thing. But in a classroom setting, I get it. You have 25 students. You're sitting there. You're giving you have a curriculum. You're teaching everybody the same thing. Everybody's on the same page. Everyone's at the semi-intellectual level. Not some of us. Some are in more of the college prep than others. But for the most part, everybody's about at the same level. You have 25 individuals whose mental state goes from extreme to low to medium. How do you as an individual are able to change how you deal with these individuals when you have 25?
You have to meet them where they are, and you rely heavily on your team. You have, besides a clinical therapist, your partners are the behavioral health specialist who deals with the behavior. You have the peer that is like the big brother sister. You have the parent partner that helps the parents so that the home is more stable and goes along with the program when we're long gone and after hours, because they have to continue what we're doing in order to help. Everybody works as a team. So
is this your team for each individual, or does each individual have a team on its own?
No, it's my team works with
those.
So
25.
I have a peer that works with me, a parent partner that works with me at BHS.
Okay. All right. So it's a group of what, like 5, 6 of you guys?
Yes.
Okay. You guys work together with each individual.
Yes,
All
we
right.
go at different times, and like I can sit there and say this person has a problem of just regulating their emotions. So when something doesn't go their way, or they're told no, or something disrupts their routine, they have destructive outbreaks to where they destroy things because they're just not comprehending. Their emotions are okay to have, but the reactions need to be more managed. So that's when the behavioral health specialist will come in and say, hey, when you get this way and you start feeling this way, let's try this instead.
Got it. Got it. So now your group of 5 or 6 individuals who is your that make up your team, those are still dealing with 25 very different individuals at different states of mental health crisis, correct?
Yes.
All right. Again, I feel like that's a lot, right? You have, let's say, nowadays you have, we were talking about this the other day, but you have these health gurus, the online life coaches, right? And even
Mhm.
some people some therapists that see you online, they or whatever the case is, and even they don't have a lot of people that they deal with. But I feel like 25 seems like a lot. No, I'm not saying you guys aren't doing a great job. I'm sure you are, but my thing is in that team of 5 or 6. I mean, because, trust me, I've dealt with people that have some mental health issues, and it's exhausting. It's draining sometimes. How do you guys get through that when you have 25 people that you're dealing with different states of mental health concerns?
It's a lot of leaning on each other more than anything else. If we see
And
them, we
drinking, I
have
would
to
assume.
see what's that?
And drinking, I would assume.
I would, yeah. We're after hours in a controlled environment.
That's the correct response.
There you go.
I'm sorry.
It also depends. Like there's some that are need more attention than others.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's basically meeting them where they're at. Like, we need to support this one because they just went through another breakup and they don't know how to detach and they feel worthless. And so let's focus a little more on this one at this time. But the other one's doing great. She's socializing. She's going out with her family. She's starting to talk. Okay, so we can lax a little and let that one go just a little bit, but let's hold on to this one more. Because all of us in a single day, we can interact with 10, 15 people,
Damn.
employees, coworkers, just out in the store, even dealing with the cashier. We have to interact with them where they're at also. That means that the person before them was rude and they're just coming down from it. And so they might have the reaction you want because they're just still dealing with that. So it's an interaction with everybody on a daily basis. You got to meet them where they're at.
So, just to clarify for our viewers, you've said this 3 or 4 times. Meet them where they're at. What's that mean?
No judgment on them. You
Like
you know that.
meet them where like their crisis level is. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Okay.
So their emotional level is. So we know at the end of it when we walk into a teenager who just lost her boyfriend and she thinks the world's going to end, and her friends are putting the wrong things on social media and they're making her look bad, and she just her whole world's over because to her that's her world.
Yeah.
So when we go in, we see the bigger picture, but we can't say, hey, snap out of it, this is childish, like you're gonna get over it.
Now you tell me. I've done
So-
this with my daughter.
So let me ask this, Karen. So you brought up that situation right there is perfect. When we were all younger,
Mm-hmm.
our world ended too with our first dating relationship and that first breakup, right? The whole world
Yes.
was gone. Why didn't we have or need this kind of treatment for us back then? And why is it so much more prevalent now that youth and folks in general need this kind of psychological reinforcement now than we did back in the day? Or was it we needed it back then too? It wasn't so available.
Because back then we were allowed to with our own thoughts. There wasn't a lot of outside opinion. You sat in your room, you sat quiet, you had your small group of friends. Now there's that monster out there of social media that,
Yeah.
I hear you.
and
TikTok.
when these kids go in there and they're home alone, or they're not home alone, but they're in the room by themselves, and it's 9 o'clock at night and they can't sleep because all their thoughts are running through their head. What do kids normally do? What do? We scroll through social media just to go brain dead for a little bit. So with that, they go on that, and then they find the algorithms that match their mood, their feelings, and they sink further into it because now they're validated by social media. So their feelings are valid and everybody else is wrong, including their parents. Like, you don't know what you're telling me. I just watched 15 videos that say that I'm thinking the right thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Joe and I, we've had so many discussions about the monster that is social media and all the things that it brings so many great things, like, folks that went to high school together and stuff that have been disconnected for so long. Now we're reconnecting, and there's so many good things about it. But the damage that it's done to especially our youth, it's bad enough for us as older adults, because we get sucked into that trap of scrolling for a half hour, an hour. Joe does it for like 6 hours every night. So
6.5.
6.5, yeah. But for folks that have grown up in this society and that's all they know, I can see where it's really tough. And especially, folks like yourself that are in the psychology realm that know what yesteryear was like and can base yourself in reality, and you're having to try to help somebody that is in a baseless reality, right? That is social media. And like you said, they're so overwhelmed and wrapped up in this false, reinforcement that just completely takes over their feeling. And I think, we've seen where you guys were talking about autism a minute ago, and that is, I'm the conspiracy guy. That's 100% because of all the shots and everything that are required by kids. If you go back to 1970, it was 1 in 10,000. In 1989 to 99 is when shots were required for all kids going into school. It went up to, in 2000, 1 in 150 have autism. It is right now 1 in 36. So 317% increase. If you think about that in terms of what social media has done to the mental health of our kids, it's the same thing. We, just like Karen said, we didn't have social media and all these things that ran rampant through us. We just went home and watched 90210 or whatever was on the, TV at the time. And our parents yelled at us, dinner's ready, get your butt out here kind of thing. And we didn't have and if you wanted to call your friends, you're calling if your mom wasn't on the phone with grandma already, right? Because we didn't have a cell phone. So you couldn't call anybody. You couldn't contact anybody. So yeah, it's a whole different headspace for kids and adults that are kids. And then when you look at, and this is something I'd be curious to know about too, there has been such an uptick in transgender kids and all that kind of thing, kids transitioning, not knowing who they are. Do you guys see a lot more of that, of kids that are really confused? And do you see it, the ones that are depressed and everything, do you see them more questioning that, well, maybe that's why I'm confused, is because I'm in the wrong body or whatever the case may be? Do you see more of that?
We did last year. It has definitely died down a lot this year, but it was very predominant last year, to where there was a lot of it, a lot of flags, a lot of, let's make sure we're careful with pronouns. Let's make sure we're this. And I get it was an introduction to it, but it seems to have, it doesn't feel so much as the look at me era at this time of what it was last year. We still have some, but it's not as demanding. It's a lot more, I need my mom to see me, or I need my dad to see me, and this is the way I feel, and try to connect with them. It's not as flashy as it was last year, where it was in your face, like, this is what I'm at, I need you to recognize me, and this is who I am. It's still there with some of the kids, but not as much. But for us, it's also, or at least for me, I know there are, like, the county split, everybody split, like, oh no, we have to be delicate with pronouns, we have to do this, you have to see them as they, them. And so for me, having a conversation with someone, they said, well, yeah, they said this. Well, who's they? Like, there was more than one person? Like, I don't get it. So, being that sensitive, I have to be that sensitive. I know that, like, we get dinged for things like that. We get talked to for things like that. It's also, what's wrong with you? Like, as a person, it's great. I'm going to call you by your name. If, your pronouns are there, what's wrong with your name? And that's who you are.
I wonder what changed. Anyway, so getting back on track onto the gatekeepers of survival, in your group, your 5-6 person group that you have that helps you with these case files, has there ever been, or have you seen in other groups of these 5 or 6 teams, where there has been perhaps non-agreement amongst each other, whether in treatment, whether in what you say, whether in how you say it, or whether what the next step is? Has there ever been any disagreement based on, you're younger than I am, you don't understand, it's because you have leftist or rightist views? Have you ever seen that?
We see it a lot more with our peers. So with our peers are more of, they're hired based off of their personal experience, their lived experience. So whether they've had alcoholism, whether they have drug abuse, whether they've been abused in any way themselves, depending on whatever their trauma is, we bring them in to relate so that they can say, hey, I went through this too, it's okay to talk, and this is, you'll survive it just like we did. And it's to better understand the member, and they are a vital part of our team.
Correct.
But it's never screened on how much have you processed your trauma? Where are you at your recovery stage? And, are you able to do this? Because eventually
they might still be dealing with it, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's never questioned on that when they do the interviews, because that's where I started with mine as a partner, as a peer. But it's also very triggering because you relive your stuff and you see what they go through and you get emotionally attached. So for them, it's a lot of going to the CT or the parent partner and saying, hey, the parent's doing this, the kid feels this way, they're telling me this and this and this. But one scenario would be where the child decides on, mom is always yelling at me. They don't get me. The teacher's always yelling at me and raising the voice. They scare me or they isolate me. And you go into the classroom, you watch, and it's like, hey, you need to put down your pencil. Oh my gosh, they yelled at me.
So clearly their interpretation is a little different than yours.
Exactly. But the peer will relate and they'll push that on us, and they don't have the big picture. The clinical therapist will work with the family, will work with the teachers, will work with the counselors. So their whole purpose is to have the big picture, not just one side.
Yeah. The reason I ask that, because most conflict, especially when it comes, and I don't mean conflict like you guys are going to fight, go down the street after work, but I mean most.
Taking my earrings off, Joe. I'm
taking my earrings off. But most, I feel like in these situations, especially yours, that is kind of important because you're talking about mental health. I feel like there's going to be differences in that group. And this is a reason I ask. When you got hired on, when you applied for that job, did they ask you what political party you voted for?
No.
Did they ever ask you whether you believed in gender dysphoria?
They asked what my view was on that.
Okay. And that's key. So remember that. How about, did they ever ask you questions that didn't make sense? Like, did they ever ask you about, and this is, again, for your job that you're at, how you've used, so like there's a lot of these questions, like, how most of these jobs, they put you in this scenario question. They give you a scenario, you have to ask her the question, how you would do it. Were any of these questions based on like political views, on gender affirmation, just weird things that you feel that, because I get, especially in your position, where some of these questions might apply. But I think personally, to be at a level ground with everybody thinking the same way, and I don't want to think like robots and we're all thinking one certain way, but as far as when it comes to making decision for the well-being of an individual, like doctors, they go to school and they all learn the same way how to deal with the kidneys, how to deal with the heart, right? But there's steps to get there. Some doctors bypass those, some doctors follow it to the T, right? So there's always, I have to check again, or you go to the doctor 15 times. I feel like, for example, in what you do, in how people are either denied or approved eligibility, there should be a basis. There should be a list that everybody, regardless of background, needs to go through this questionnaire. And I mean, have it. Like, do you have an I-9? Do you have a W-2? Do you have, like stuff that's tangible? And I think that's important because at the end of the day, you're trying to help people and you're being hired. You're not asked your political views. You're not asked if you lean left, you lean right. You're not asked things like that because those things are irrelevant, correct? They have no bearing in the mental health of an individual. We have to understand that, and I think a lot of people agree with us out there, the system is broken. It's broken. Any way you look at it, the system is broken. Either it's because how we process eligibility because of an individual there, how we provide the treatment. And I know that in your area, you've seen a lot of it. Questions is, how do we fix these things? How do we fix them? And well, first of all, we need to know what the problem is. So what's the problem? Bias is inevitable. We know the system is broken. And to fix it, we need to know why it's broken. So one, I think, is important is bias is inevitable, right?
Yeah, everyone brings personal judgment to the desk. No way around it.
Political worldwide view impacts fairness.
Yep. So conservative caseworkers might see everyone as freeloaders, where a progressive caseworker might overcompensate to right the injustice.
And that's a no-brainer. It happens. We see it happening, and it's happening everywhere in any state, any county, any program. And then here's the other thing. Oversight is weak.
Yeah, so maybe internal audits are slow or ignored. Appeals take months. People can't eat in a few months, right? We talked about this early on, that there's things that have to move along really quick, and depending on the person, they may, or the individual may take longer to get their paperwork done or get the information that's needed or what have you. And their case is going to be closed. So the person that's doing this is kind of helping them along or pushing them along to get the answers and the information that they need from them so they can close their case and get their, payments or whatever.
Hey, Karen, let me ask you this. Do you guys have oversight?
Yes.
What do you feel of that oversight? Do you think it's strong? You think it's catching everything? Or do you think it's a little weak?
I think oversight.
Or do you think it's just a joke in general and something that they have to do because the government requires it for the funding?
I think with a lot of things, the devil's in the details. So we can miss a lot of things to where it'll eventually, it accumulates.
Yeah. So in your case, is oversight by your own agency or is it an outside agency?
An agency.
Huh. There's the devil in the detail. So another one is state by state inconsistencies.
Yeah. So one person could be approved in New York and denied in Texas with the exact same information, depending on where
do you agree, Jay, that if the federal government, D.C., is giving money to these states for, let's narrow it down to, SNAP or mental health, should the qualifications for all 50 states who are getting money be the same?
I would say the qualifications should be the same. The only caveat there would be cost of living, right, in different areas.
Correct.
Because
which would impact EBT, but not a mental health.
Absolutely. Right. So, yeah, somebody that lives in, let's say, so we're talking about California here, somebody that lives in LA County is going to be affected a lot different from somebody that lives in, Riverside County, let's say, because of the differences and then San Diego County, right? You get down to where you're in, or OC, Orange County, where, cost of living's way different.
Right. And that should be consistent, and Karen would agree. That would be consistent when it comes to funding that individual, when it comes to money. But as far as getting help, like mental health, housing, the qualifications for that should be across the board, right? Because if you're cray-cray in New York, your cray-cray in California should be the same cray-cray, right? It's not going to be any worse or any more, extreme level of depression is going to be the extreme level of depression in California as it is in Wyoming, as it is in, that's an individual feeling. You can't take that from somebody. And I think the qualification should go across the board. Would you agree with us on that, Karen, or no?
I would. There is one incident that's here locally that we've been fighting on, and that is where the funding comes from. So at this moment in the city I live in particularly, there is no child services. We have no county resources. We have no county mental health resources in the city I'm living in. We have to actually outsource to another city. The reason why is because the city council alone does not permit county employee buildings here. They don't want county in the city because that cuts their funding. So what happens is with the taxes, the schools get funded to have a CT on campus, but you're talking hundreds of kids with one therapist.
Wow, that's crazy. So despite the need of their community, they'd rather not have it to have more tax dollars going to their city. Wow, that is crazy.
There was a huge thing with the city council too, where the city was supposed to build a wellness center, which was supposed to have the rehabs, the mental health for children, seniors, substance abuse, all different types of resources in this one area, and city shut it down.
It's crazy. So it's not only the people trying to bypass stuff. It seems like cities also try to do things to benefit themselves.
There's that old saying, follow the money, right? And what do the cities want? They want the funding for themselves. So
go Newsom, right? Here's the other thing. Automation isn't a fix.
Yeah, software just makes biased decisions faster if the input is flawed. And that goes with anything. I mean, we have AI right now that is being talked about that has a huge bias based on what it's learning from. If the internet is scrubbed of things that are, let's say, conservative based, it's going to get a more liberal point of view, and that's what it's going to base all of its decisions on. Yeah, humans still control the data and the interpretation.
Yeah, so AI could help you. Still, whatever that's what I'm thinking about. But it's whatever you put into it, it's going to come up with, right? And then the biggest one, I think, and a lot of people and I think that's where that we've been kind of pointing to, is, of course, fraud and the need to coexist.
Fraud's going to be out there. People abuse it. And the thing that sucks is people suffer silently, and then they just end up giving up, right? Because after a point, if they're not getting what they need, they just give up on thinking that anybody cares anymore. The system doesn't catch either group reliably.
See, and I think that's a problem. And that's the thing we've been talking to about. And I think this is the whole theme of this episode, is because we have systems in place that are supposed to function and work smoothly, right? But they're not, because we've had people who've either found a way around things, or we have employees who found ways around things for people they like or not like. And clearly it's not everyone. I'm saying, the majority of people are honest, that want to do better for their community, and some are not. Some are just disgruntled. Some have been there 25 years, have been riding this roller coaster and really enjoy it. And I think that fraud is evident in everything we do. Now, Karen, tell me if this is true, but I heard a story that in California, I could be an entrepreneur and take advantage of mental health people. Like, for example, if I go buy a fixer-up house, fix it up, I have a couple of bedrooms, I could actually rent it out, each one individually, as a housing for a mental health patient. Am I right? Is that true?
You are.
What the heck? Talk to me about that. How does that work?
So what it is, a lot of these homes that we're noticing that we have to go out to or fund or give housing to our mental health patients in the middle of a neighborhood, those nice big houses with the small little 5-6 bedroom houses will actually, with the county, you can get the housing.
Right.
The housing will go through depending on your emergency and who knows who and how fast you want to get it in. If you do like Section 8,
yeah.
Again, that's a 2-3 year waiting list at times, especially here in California. But there are ways around it with mental health. So mental health can get you in a place within a week, whether it's a hotel room for a little bit till they actually find you housing. But nowadays it's so much easier, especially around this county area. They purchase homes. Private individuals will purchase homes. They will actually have it funded to where they just take the housing mental health individuals, whether it's substance abuse mental health or if it's actual mental health. They're funded about $700 to $800 depending on their disability with it and what the funding is. But normally it's about $700-800 per person. That person gets housing funding to wherever they want to go. Well, here's this big house and you can rent out a room to 2 people, and you can have 2 people in that room, strangers, whatever.
So you could bunk it up. You could double bunk it or in one room.
You can stick 4 bunk beds in a room and stick as many in there as you want. So you figure, but we're being nice, so we're gonna say 2.
All right.
Okay, so with 2 people, you would have $800 each. 5-bedroom house, you're looking at, there's 10 people to those rooms, $800 a piece, $1,600 for one room. That's $8,000 in a month.
Hey,
We're
Joe, I bought a house downtown.
While we were talking, I went online and purchased a home.
I went on Zillow and zipped it up, man. That was it.
Now, wait, there's so much more to it. So right now I could be totally running this ship right now. But here's the thing. It's $8,000 just for that part. Then you have to get an LVN in the building because they have to monitor their medications. They have to make sure they're okay. So you have one inside. Even if you got 3 LVNs for each of the work shifts.
Okay.
You get each of them to be the caregiver and help each of those individuals apply for IHSS benefits, in-home supportive services benefits. So with that, they get those benefits there. And of course, the member's going to want to do that because that's $800 to $900 for them.
On top of the housing?
On top of the housing that they get. So they get so the individual that comes in gets Social Security because of their disability.
Correct.
Then they'll get food stamps. Then they'll get the housing paid for.
So they get SNAP on top of that too?
They get Medicaid, SNAP, then Social Security. Now the SNAP benefits will be not at cap because they have income.
Okay.
Depending on who's in office too, because at times, I think it was Obama. I have to remember. It's been a while. But even with that, they didn't count their Social Security. They gave them the full benefits.
So as a homeowner, can I use that SNAP money to buy food for the house that I use to prepare for them?
You can. It's frowned upon, but you can. What happens?
I hear my pockets jingling. Anyway.
So what happens is an individual comes in. They end up having their Social Security, their housing. When they come in, you have the LVN work with them or the house manager work with them, get them food stamps, make sure that they sign that you are also on their plan and that you are their representative. You are their authorized representative. So you can purchase the food. You can talk about their case. You can do all that stuff for them because now you have an LVN or a house manager who does all the cooking for them. and buys the food and the groceries for them. So now you have 10 individuals, each with EBT cards, with what, minimum $60, if at the minimum of each one, buy their groceries as long as someone's making it. You can even pay someone to make it at this time. And then you get them approved for IHSS. Once you get them approved for IHSS, they have their own money, which is like $800-900 for them. But then the LVN becomes their caregiver at $800 to $900 a check. So right there, you just paid the LVN. If you split it's about $2,300 a month that they would get by splitting all the members, the 10 members, between the three of them.
Wow. So you're talking about let's say $700,000 home in the middle of a nice community, even gated, it'd say that could be a mental health housing.
Yes.
You don't even know about it, huh? That is amazing. And this is legit stuff that people could do, and they're taking advantage of the system and those individuals. And that's kind of scary. Maybe some have a good tender heart for it, but I think that's like, we shouldn't be able to profit from these individuals. We shouldn't be able to make money. And I think something that we've talked about is on this show is that we need to have or bring back mental institutions the right way, not like they were before with electroshock therapy and, padded rooms and things like that, but with real people helping real problems. Doing that, I get maybe put them in an environment that's the common environment to be in, helps them in their therapy. But, you're talking about people who are dealing with drug addiction as well that's in there. I don't know. I just feel like we need better assistance. And I don't feel that programs like these should benefit anybody except for what they're written for, but not monetarily. I don't think that's going to be helpful. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, that's a tough one because we've talked about kids that are in foster care, right? It's kind of the same thing. People take advantage of the foster care system, right? So they're like, they don't actually care about the kids. They're just making money by having kids in their room. And the same thing, like Karen was talking about, you put a couple bunk beds and that kind of thing. Now with that, I do know that they only allow so many kids in the room, right, when they come in, but you can do bunk beds and you can put a couple kids as long as they're of the same sex, which I don't know if that's changed since we've got 50 different kinds of sexes.
We can't assume sex, Jay.
Yeah,
right. Can't assume sex.
Yeah, it is tough because there's that line. I've said this before. I don't find a problem giving people compensation to help other people, right? Because that really, what do we all do? We all have a job, and our job we get paid to do, and that is to help other people in some way.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
However,
but when making a profit,
right, and people taking advantage of the system. So you and I, because we go to the same church and everything, I've said this multiple times. Like people have a problem with church pastors making money, and you have somebody like a Kenneth Copeland, right? The guy owns a house that has an airport on the property.
Yeah.
What is it? 13 bedrooms or whatever he has.
Wow.
He has a Ferrari and all kinds of stuff.
It's for the 12 disciples.
Yeah. I guess so. That is all the hooker disciples he's got out there somewhere. So
that's talking about the strip club disciples. Down there where he lives.
It's like, man, Kenneth, what's all the poles doing in that room? Then you have like our pastor. If you told me, and I have no clue what our pastor makes. If you told me he makes $100,000 a year, I'd have zero problem with that. Seriously. Now, again, you go to somebody that's driving a Ferrari, has a huge house that they pay zero taxes on because they say it's a church facility. Yeah. I have a problem with that. So rewinding it back to this, that's the same deal. You have to have folks that have just a really good soul to help other people, and they will make enough money to make a living. And again, I don't mind if they make it, maybe even a little bit more, because dealing with people with mental health issues, kids with, or folks with autism, things like that, depending on the severity, can be really difficult. I mean, I've known people that have ran halfway houses for, ex-druggies or folks that are heavy into alcohol and everything. That's not an easy life, man. That's, really tough because you're dealing with people that have a lot of demons that they keep carrying. Even though they're kind of out of that whole lifestyle, they're still carrying a lot of that with them. The problem is, just like everything else in life, folks take advantage of the system. That's why it's a saying. They're taking advantage of the system. Well, they are. They're making money, profiting off of other people's misfortune, and that's really sad to see that.
And off the county and state or city, they're also making money off of them, right? So
there's a range of it too, though, because you have the ones that are really good at it, the ones that have the housekeepers, the ones that make sure the medication's being out, that's their safe place. If not, they're going to end up out in the streets.
Yeah.
Right.
And with mental health alone, just being out in the streets, that night you pick up your meds are stolen and you're off your meds again. So, I mean, there's the danger and all that. It's like, oh, there's that crazy, have they been drinking? There's always a backstory to them.
Yeah.
So with that, it can go all the way from, because you are dealing with substance abuse, because you are dealing with mental health, you put two people in the same room and they're at different stages of their recovery. If it's low enough, the other one's going to come down with them. So how is that being regulated? Like, are we just throwing them in together, just like an institution, to where you're going to learn more good than you learn bad? Or you're going to learn more bad than you do good with that.
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
So the other part to that too is housing, knowing that this is your money housing, you're in charge of it. Are you doing the right thing with it? Meaning, are you going in the home? How often are you going in the home? How often are you inspecting it? How often because you can choose, hey, I don't want to use that facility. I don't want to use that home. I want to go to this home.
Let me ask you this. The housing that you mentioned, is it under the umbrella of your program, or is it still from the urban housing development?
So again, it's just private owners.
I mean the ones who approve the money. Is it coming?
That's just urban housing.
Okay, so urban house. So it's still the same people who do Section 8, but it's just a quicker process because of the need.
Yes.
Okay, I got you. The reason for that is because urban housing development do have a responsibility of going and checking on that housing and for what it's being used for and the purpose that it was intended for, because that's how you keep your eligibility. I was just curious.
Actually, that one is actually through the county. So Riverside County funds our housing.
Oh, okay, all right. So it's not the state of California urban housing development. It's a county one. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Man, that's a lot of good stuff going on there, man. There's clearly a lot of issues happening. They're not being addressed, right? Because there's no way to address these problems. Again, we could sit there and say, hey, don't put politics into it. You could even go as far as ask the question, do you favor a political side or not? People are not going to be honest. People are not going to have to be honest. They don't have, but how can we start to sway the arm to fix these kind of issues? I mean, I think some of the things that we should and need to, we spoke about it earlier, is a national eligibility standard. Right? A standard that goes across the board nationwide. So at least there's some level of accountability, right? So at least we know. Now, does that mean the states aren't going to lie to qualify? Probably will. They probably will. I feel like every section that it goes to, every channel that it's funneled through, there should be a eligibility standard that is followed, that is a standard, right? So if DC is going to give this state money for mental health, then they need to have a tight standard. Hey, you need to have X amount of clinical therapists. You need to have X amount of peer trainers. You need to have X amount of, give them standards to be on. And that's across the board, because I'm giving you money. And if you cannot meet these standards, guess what? We're not giving you the funding, because we want this money to go where it's going to help people and not make people profit, or it's going to get abused. The other thing is develop some external watchdog organizations, right? Now, again, I could say with no political ties, everybody's political here, whether they think they're not or they are. They're going to say, oh, I don't like that dude. Oh, I like that guy. They're going to pick a side, and they tend to follow those type of policies. So that's hard. But if you get enough people that are from both areas, that are both lefties and both righties, into this watchdog, then I feel that you could get some kind of balance and kind of say, all right, look, man, let's come to a consensus. This is what we need to do. We're not doing it for political views or for political gout. We're doing it for the individuals that we're supposed to be helping. Right. And I think if we create these watchdogs, I think it'd be great. What do you think?
And if you think about how the political system is set up, right, and right now there's a big deal with Texas redoing lines, for how many representatives they have. And a lot of states have done that. And we're looking deeper into that now and seeing that, there are some states that have no representation on one side or the other. So I agree. It would be really good to have folks from both sides, because, not always are people from the right or the left wrong or right on situations, right? Usually folks that are a little more left-leaning have a little bit more of that compassion side of thing, and people on the right have more of that what makes sense, right? Yeah, building compassion and accountability is huge. Stop punishing people for asking for help. We make it a thing that if people need help, that, well, are we going to give you money for it? Again, I always go back to my personal thing with my dad with the VA. I mean, they made me feel like a thief when the guy came to my house and was talking about, my dad and me being a fiduciary, handling the finances for my dad's account through the VA and everything. And it's like, I'll pay for all this stuff, but he risked his life in the military to have these benefits later on in life. And now when he's not mentally of capacity to be able to handle his funds and do everything, listen, no matter what, if I take all of his money, I got to pay for the place personally.
Yeah.
So again, there has to be some kind of oversight, because you do have people that take advantage of the system. So Karen, what is one of the things that you think you would change first in the whole deal? What small changes do you think would make a big difference?
One for sure, and talk to a lot of eligibility techs as far as Department of Public Social Services, would be to have a centralized drop off for applications. Do them all online, drop them off, or go into the office if you need to, because there are people without computers still there, that aren't computer savvy either, to where they can go into the office, someone sit with them, upload it, do the application online, bring all your verifications, do what you need to do, like in a computer lab setting, and have it go to one central location. Why can't we process it from one area? Why can't that be distributed across the board evenly?
Yeah, that's really good. I know.
Yeah, good
See,
point.
that's another one I didn't even think about. A lot of these people that are in these situations probably don't have computers and stuff anymore, don't have access to internet, or like you say, aren't really versed on using that kind of stuff. I mean, I look at the job market today, people that are in there, and most everybody knows how to use smartphones and a mouse and a keyboard and all that. You can't go into a job anymore and just get an application. It's all done online. Nobody talks to you. There's some kind of algorithm and everything. There should be an easier and more unbiased way for people to get their applications through that system. I agree.
Yeah, and yeah, that's and you made a good point. And there's only so much you could screen through information on the computer. People are very emotional. And here's the thing, Karen, and I think I've seen it. Some of these, when you go online and fill these forms out, you need to be a doctor level individual to answer some of these questions. Like, they're confusing, and I don't think that's fair for people who, let's be honest, some of these people who need help are low income or have no resources, have no family, there's so many factors behind it. And that's the reason we see that so many people that are in these programs are low income, is because they wait till they hit rock bottom to look for help. Help seems so far-fetched, seems so far away, because we put these obstacles out there. And then on top of that, we have the human obstacle, which is people's bias and their views. And oh, you're poor because you're a righty. You voted for that orange man, so you poor. You should have been smart and voted for like Biden, who said Mexicans and black people don't have computers, right? And those are the kind of things that people have to deal with. And to me, that's hard. It's hard to get online as an individual. Yes, I get it. There's resources. Go to your public library. They have computers. You go online. But who's going to help you fill out those forms? Those forms are incredibly difficult to fill out. And some of these things you have, and you need this, you need to file this, and then you need to submit this. And, I get it. We have a standard that we're pushing, Jay and I feel even you, that there's a standard that we should have for eligibility, but make it easy for people to fulfill that standard. Don't make it a task that's impossible, because again, these are people with limited resources, right? They got to Uber, they got to find rides, they got to, whatever the case is, to get that help. It's very, very hard for them to do so. So, open up your offices. Stop using one guy for 300 applicants. Get in there and use people. It's like, hey, come and sit down. Let's talk. I've always felt that face-to-face interaction. One, you could read the person a little bit better, and you could tell if someone's going to be lying to you. You could almost tell. Do you remember those days when people would go into the office for county resources, state resources, and sit there with an individual who's asking the questions and typing them in? Oh, okay. Yeah,
we did. It was pre-COVID.
Right. Now, obviously, everyone's scared, right? Everyone's scared, except when they have to tell you something about COVID, they're all in your face. But
yeah, we used to have those little telephone booth desks.
Yeah.
And that was, and you could literally tell, because you can tell the ones, because with that, you ask them the questions, are you homeless? Mind you, they just turned 18 and just got off their mom's CalWorks case. So now they're 18, now they're homeless. But you're going to sit there with your nails done. You're going to sit there with your iPhone, brand new iPhone, just plop that right there on the desk and tell me I'm living out of my car.
Sounds good. You know how much nails cost? I went to get mine the other day. It was like $100.
I'm telling you.
But no, but see, again, you could see that if you're in person, you're sitting there with them and talking to them,
Exactly.
you're reading them, you're able to see they come in there with their Gucci bags and stuff. You're like, wait a minute, look, even swamp meat Gucci is expensive right now. Don't even come at me with that. So,
It's called Fuchi.
oh, Fuchi, I
It's
think
bags that smell funny.
yeah, right. So I feel we have a problem. We have a serious problem in our nation that needs to be addressed. People don't want to. People are just gotten too comfortable being lazy. People have gotten too comfortable sitting behind a computer screen. People have gotten too comfortable working from home and taking more breaks than they are working. And it's impacting how we live. It's impacting citizens of this great nation. It's impacting our people that really need help. And that to me is the core of it. The core of this money is to help people that really need it, not people who want to cheat the system, not people who want extra money to buy themselves more food, not people that there was a time I remember, man, I come from a family that had their own businesses, so I've seen this where people come in and they used to remember when the EBT used to be little coupons. Karen, remember those?
Yes.
Jay, you remember
Yep.
those?
I do not.
Okay, well, you're not part of the us four pokes, but anyway.
In the shape of little dollars.
Yeah, they would come in. They were little. You get little. It was like those little coupon books you get when the National Day Festival was in India. You rip them out.
Yes.
You got a little.
And
thing.
you rip them out.
Yeah.
The little.
Yeah. So it's those little. They were little coupons. Had ones, five different denominations. They would sell those. They would sell you a book of $60 for like $20 for a quick crack pipe, and that's how it was. Now, has that changed? Yeah, it's gone to an EBT card, but all that's changed is you hand the card to somebody and you give them their PIN and they're using it. They just bought their card, and I've seen
You can
it
buy
happen.
stuff off of Amazon.
I've seen this. I've seen people
Really?
buy cards and sell cards. The good thing that JFK is doing is getting away from that fast food, the junk food stuff for EBT purchases. I love that. Get away from all that stuff. If you need assistance, then you should be buying healthy stuff, because that Susie Smith with $7,000 of EBT buying a bunch of junk food and then having a health issue with her heart because she's 400 pounds is not helping anybody. I think that we need to do a better job as a society and stop I think that's the biggest thing. Jay and Karen, I think you both would agree that we live in a society where it's become all about being selfish, and we're so selfish that we don't care who we're taking the help from as long as it's benefiting me, and I think we need to take a step back as a society, step back as Americans and say, you know what, I am blessed to have what I have. This person needs the help more than I do. Right? But we're too selfish to do that. So we need to do better out there, guys. And let me be the first to say, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insight on this was incredible. And it, of course, only supports what me and Jay have been talking about. A lot of times we feel like we're talking through our butt, but no, you actually made it like we knew what we were talking about. So
We're still talking through our butt. It's okay.
well, we really do. But we really appreciate your time. And again, ladies and gentlemen out there in the world of Outspoken, she's not a real Karen. She's totally opposite of a Karen, but we thought it would be funny to use the name Karen
Thank you.
because I thought it was funny. And so did Jay.
Yeah.
Jay wanted to call her LaQuisha or something. I don't know why. But I said, let's go Karen. Let's just go Karen. It's simple.
Yeah.
Because, I go try, there's like 50 ways to spell LaQuisha, and I don't know one of them. So
Yeah. Well, with the name Karen, the one thing you had to say sometime during this episode is, I need to speak to your manager. That's it.
There you go. Where's the write-ups?
Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, before we get out of here, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken, share the show with everyone you know, and hit the icon to get updated when we upload a new episode. Take care of one another.
And remember, do better, be better.
And as always, God bless America.
We'll see you guys next week. Have a great week.
See you next Tuesday.